She thought love had given her everything, until one night a single dinner party revealed a betrayal so deep it shattered her world. A pregnant wife, a powerful empire, and secrets no one was ever meant to uncover. But when the cameras start rolling and every move becomes a headline, survival turns into a dangerous game of truth versus power. What really happened the night she vanished, leaving only a letter behind? Stay with me, because the twists waiting ahead will leave you speechless. And if you crave more stories cloaked in mystery and betrayal, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss the darkness just beneath the surface. Victoria Sterling stood outside the penthouse suite at the Ritz-Carlton, her hand resting protectively on her 7-month pregnant belly. February 14th, their 5th wedding anniversary. The weight of the surprise she'd planned for weeks pressed against her chest like a secret about to burst free. She'd coordinated everything perfectly with Marcus's assistant, ensuring his schedule was clear, arranging for their favorite restaurant to cater an intimate dinner in the suite she'd booked months in advance. The champagne in her hand was non-alcoholic, though Marcus wouldn't notice. He rarely noticed details about her anymore, too consumed with Sterling Capital's latest acquisition or the overnight futures from Tokyo. But tonight would be different. Tonight would remind him of the woman he'd fallen in love with before the billions, before the power plays, before their marriage became another line item on his spreadsheet of assets. "Mrs. Sterling," the hotel manager greeted her with practiced warmth as she approached the door. "Everything has been arranged exactly as you requested. The catering staff finished setting up 20 minutes ago." Victoria smiled, feeling the baby kick as if sharing her anticipation. She'd chosen this particular suite because it was where Marcus had proposed 6 years ago, back when he was still building his empire, still hungry for success but not yet consumed by it. The memory of that night, of his nervousness as he dropped to one knee, seemed like something from another lifetime. She turned the key card, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped into a scene that would shatter not just her marriage, but every carefully constructed illusion she'd maintained about her life. Marcus was there, but not alone. He reclined on the cream leather sofa, his $2,000 shirt unbuttoned, laughing at something on his phone, while Scarlett Devine traced her manicured fingers along his chest. Scarlett, the Instagram model whose face adorned billboards across Seattle, whose 15 million followers hung on every posted photo and story. Another woman, blonde and giggling with the high-pitched nervousness of someone who knew they didn't belong, poured drinks at the bar. The champagne bottle slipped from Victoria's hand, hitting the marble floor with a crash that finally drew their attention. The sound echoed through the suite like a gunshot, sharp and final. "Victoria?" Marcus's voice held no guilt, no surprise, only mild irritation, as if she'd interrupted a board meeting by arriving early. Scarlett didn't even bother to move her hand from his chest. Instead, she lifted her phone with her free hand, and Victoria heard the unmistakable sound of a camera shutter. Once, twice, 3 times. The blonde woman laughed nervously, grabbing her purse, mumbling something about needing to leave. "Happy anniversary," Victoria said, her voice hollow, echoing from somewhere outside her body. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if protesting the scene before them, as if trying to wake her from this nightmare. Marcus stood slowly, buttoning his shirt with the same methodical precision he used when reviewing contracts. His gray eyes, the ones she'd once thought were storm clouds full of passion, now seemed like concrete, cold and unmovable. "You weren't supposed to be here," he said, as if that explained everything. Clearly, Victoria's hand went to her belly protectively, feeling the life in her that belonged to both of them, but suddenly felt only like hers. "How long? Does it matter?" He straightened his collar, checking his appearance in the mirror behind the bar, more concerned with his reflection than his wife's devastation. Scarlett rose gracefully, her red dress clinging to her model figure in ways that made Victoria suddenly aware of her swollen ankles, her pregnancy weight, the stretch marks hidden beneath her black dress. "We should go, Marcus. This is awkward." But she didn't lower her phone. Victoria could see herself reflected in the screen, looking pale and shattered, her hand on her pregnant belly, the very picture of a scorned wife. Content for millions of followers to dissect and mock. She could already imagine the hashtags, the memes, the think pieces about women who couldn't keep their men satisfied. I'll have Richard call you about the arrangements, Marcus said to Victoria, referring to his attorney as casually as if discussing a dinner reservation that needed to be canceled. Arrangements? Victoria's voice cracked on the word. For the divorce, obviously. He picked up his Italian leather jacket from the chair, slipping it on with practiced ease. This has been coming for a while, Victoria. Don't pretend you didn't know. The blonde woman had already slipped out the door, her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway. But Scarlett lingered, still recording, as if this was content too valuable to miss. Victoria wanted to scream, to throw something, to make them both hurt, the way her heart was shattering into pieces too small to ever reassemble. But she just stood there, feeling the weight of her pregnancy, the weight of 5 years of marriage dissolving in a hotel room that smelled like expensive perfume and betrayal. "I'm 7 months pregnant with your child," Victoria said quietly, the words feeling like stones in her mouth. Marcus paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "My attorneys will be in touch about custody arrangements. I'd suggest you find representation." He glanced back, and for a moment Victoria thought she saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret? Doubt? But it was gone before she could name it. "The room is paid for through the night. Consider it a parting gift." They left her there, standing among the broken glass and spreading champagne, the suite's floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Seattle that suddenly seemed foreign and hostile. The Space Needle blinked in the distance, indifferent to her world collapsing. Victoria sank onto the sofa, the same spot where Scarlett had been moments before, the leather still warm from their bodies. Her phone buzzed insistently. Opening Instagram with trembling fingers, she saw she'd been tagged in a video. Scarlett had already posted it with the caption, "When the wife crashes the party, #awkward, #sorry, not sorry." The comments were already pouring in by the thousands. The video had been live for less than 3 minutes and already had 50,000 views. 60,000. 70,000. The numbers climbed as she watched, each view another witness to her humiliation. Victoria called her best friend Rachel, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried again, then sent a text. Nothing. Her hands shook as she pulled up her banking app, needing to check if she had enough money for a hotel room for a few nights while she figured out what to do. Access denied. She tried again, certain she'd mistyped her password in her emotional state. Access denied. Investment accounts, access denied. Even her personal checking account, the one she'd had since college, showed a zero balance when she finally got through on the third attempt with her security questions. "That's impossible," she whispered to the empty suite. She had $50,000 in that account, her own money from before the marriage, from her work as a marketing consultant before Marcus had convinced her to quit to focus on starting their family. Her phone rang. Richard Brennan, Marcus's attorney. "Victoria?" His voice was professionally sympathetic, the kind of tone lawyers perfected for delivering bad news. "I'm calling as a courtesy to inform you that Mr. Sterling filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. As per the terms of your prenuptial agreement, all joint assets are frozen pending the division of property." 3 weeks ago? Victoria's mind reeled. "But I never received—" "The papers were sent to your legal address of record. If you didn't receive them, you'll need to take that up with the Postal Service. In the meantime, I'd strongly advise you to seek legal representation. Mr. Sterling is prepared to be generous, given the circumstances, but that generosity has limits." "Generous? He's frozen all my accounts." "Only the joint accounts, as is standard in high-asset divorces. Your personal accounts should be accessible. They're showing zero balance." There was a pause. "That's a matter you'll need to discuss with your bank. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding." "Good evening, Victoria." He hung up before she could respond. The Uber driver kept glancing at Victoria in the rearview mirror as they drove through Queen Anne toward the Sterling mansion. She could see the recognition in his eyes, the way he kept looking from her to his phone mounted on the dashboard. He'd probably seen the video, now trending at #1 on social media. The pregnant wife catching her billionaire husband with a model. The stuff of tabloid dreams and Twitter threads. "Ma'am, are you sure this is the right address?" the driver asked as they pulled up to the gated entrance. Victoria saw immediately what he meant. The familiar keypad had been replaced with a biometric scanner she didn't recognize. The security guard who usually waved her through, Tom, who knew her coffee order and asked about her pregnancy at every opportunity, was gone. In his place stood someone she'd never seen before, young and stern-faced. "Mrs. Sterling?" The new guard's voice through the intercom was professionally cold. "I'm afraid you are no longer authorized to enter the property. This is my home. I live here. Mr. Sterling has instructed us that you no longer have access. Your belongings have been placed in storage unit 47 at Secure Space on Mercer Street. The key and information have been sent to your attorney." "I don't have an attorney." "Then I suggest you retain one, ma'am. Please leave the premises or I'll have to call the police." The words hit her like physical blows. The police. At her own home. The home where she'd spent 3 months designing the nursery, where she'd painted the walls soft yellow because they didn't want to know the baby's gender, where just last week she'd assembled the crib while Marcus was in Tokyo. "Ma'am, should I take you somewhere else?" the Uber driver asked, his voice gentle now, the judgment replaced with something like pity. Victoria's mind raced through options. "Take me to Rachel Morrison's house, please, 1523 Bellevue Way." But when they arrived at Rachel's colonial-style house in Bellevue, the house where Victoria had spent countless wine nights before her pregnancy, where she'd been maid of honor at Rachel's wedding just 2 years ago, her heart sank. Rachel's husband Tom stood in the doorway, his arms crossed like a bouncer at a club, where Victoria was no longer on the list. Rachel appeared behind him, her face stricken, eyes red as if she'd been crying. "Victoria, I'm so sorry," Rachel began, but Tom cut her off with a sharp gesture. "She can't stay here," Tom said flatly. "Marcus is my business partner. We're in the middle of a merger worth $200 million. I can't afford to take sides." "Take sides?" Victoria stared at them in disbelief. "I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking for a place to sleep for one night." "Rachel, please, you are my best friend." "Were," Tom corrected coldly. "Past tense. Business is business, Victoria. You should understand that better than anyone. You married into it, after all." "Tom," Rachel protested weakly, but he grabbed her arm, pulling her back into the house. "Rachel, please," Victoria called out, but the door was already closing. She caught one last glimpse of Rachel's face, saw her mouth the words, "I'm sorry," before Tom shut the door with finality. Jackson Cruz lived in a modest apartment in Capitol Hill, a converted loft in an old building that had somehow escaped Seattle's relentless gentrification. When Victoria appeared at his door at nearly midnight, soaked from the Seattle rain that had started during her Uber ride, carrying nothing but her purse, he didn't ask questions. He simply opened the door wider and let her in. "Vic," he said softly, using the nickname only he had ever called her, a remnant from their time together at the University of Washington, before Marcus Sterling had appeared with his promises and his portfolios. "I saw the news." "It's all lies," Victoria said, then stopped, correcting herself. "No, that's not true. The affair is real. But everything else, everything Diana Sterling is saying on her network?" "I know." Jackson helped her out of her soaked coat, hanging it carefully by the door. He grabbed a towel from the bathroom, handing it to her for her hair. "Diana Sterling's reputation for character assassination is legendary. She's destroyed 3 senators and at least 2 federal judges who got in her family's way. Coffee or tea?" "Tea, please, decaf." Victoria touched her belly, feeling the baby move, a reminder that her decisions affected more than just herself now. "Jackson, he took everything. The house, the money, even my father's estate. I have nothing left." Jackson's jaw tightened as he put the kettle on. He'd aged well in the 5 years since she'd chosen Marcus over him, his dark hair now touched with silver at the temples, making him look distinguished rather than old. The FBI had been good to him, or perhaps it was the other way around. He'd thrown himself into his work after their breakup, rising through the ranks with a dedication that bordered on obsession. "How did he freeze your assets so quickly?" Jackson asked, his investigative instincts automatically kicking in. "Even with a good lawyer, that takes time. He filed for divorce 3 weeks ago, apparently. Got a judge to freeze everything pending evaluation. Richard Brennan says I should have received notice, but I never did. Marcus must have redirected our mail." "That's mail fraud," Jackson said immediately, turning from the stove. "Federal crime, interstate commerce, wire fraud if he did it electronically." "Good luck proving it," Marcus doesn't make moves without covering every base. You know that. Jackson did know. 5 years ago, when Victoria had told him she was choosing Marcus, he'd done what any FBI agent would do. He'd run a background check. Everything had come back clean. Too clean. Marcus Sterling was a ghost before age 25, then suddenly appeared with an MBA from Wharton and seed money from sources that were conveniently listed as private investors. "There's something you should know," Jackson said, setting a mug of chamomile tea in front of her. "We've been investigating Sterling Capital for months. Money laundering specifically for pharmaceutical cartels moving fentanyl precursors from China through Mexico." Victoria's eyes widened. "Marcus is involved with drug cartels?" "We think so, but we can't prove it. The money moves through so many shell companies, so many jurisdictions. Every time we get close, our witnesses disappear or suddenly develop amnesia." And now, he hesitated, clearly debating how much to tell her. "What?" "My supervisor called an hour ago. We've been ordered to cease all investigation into Sterling Capital." "What? Why?" "Marcus Sterling has been classified as a protected government informant. He's apparently providing intelligence on foreign money laundering operations. Bigger fish, they say. We touch him, we compromise national security operations that go higher than my pay grade." Victoria laughed bitterly. "So he's untouchable?" "Officially, yes." Jackson went to his home office, returning with an encrypted thumb drive. "Unofficially, I copied everything before they shut us down. 3 months of surveillance, financial records, communication intercepts. If you want it, it's yours." The thumb drive sat between them on the coffee table, small and innocuous, but Victoria knew it represented Jackson risking everything: his career, his pension, possibly his freedom. "Why would you do that for me?" she asked quietly. "Because I know you," Jackson said simply. "The Victoria I knew, the one I fell in love with, she would never let someone destroy her without fighting back. And because what Marcus is doing, what the government is allowing him to do, it's wrong. People are dying from the drugs his money helps move. Families are being destroyed." "Like mine," Victoria said softly. "Like yours," Jackson agreed, "but also like the 17 overdoses we traced back to fentanyl that came through Sterling Capital's network last month. The government wants to play the long game, catch bigger fish. But those 17 people are still dead." Victoria picked up the thumb drive, its weight feeling heavier than its few grams. "If I use this, if anyone finds out you gave it to me, then I'll deal with the consequences. But Victoria, you need to be smart about this. Marcus Sterling doesn't just have money and lawyers. He has connections in every level of government, media, law enforcement. Diana Sterling owns 3 news networks and has dirt on half of Washington state's political establishment. Then what am I supposed to do? Run? Hide? Let him take my baby?" Jackson moved closer but maintained respectful distance, ever conscious of boundaries. "You survive first, then you fight. But you fight smart, and you don't fight alone." Victoria's phone buzzed with another news alert. The video of her at the hotel now had 10 million views. Someone had already made it into a meme, her shocked face with various humorous captions. She was becoming a cultural moment, a cautionary tale, a joke for strangers to share and laugh about. "Can I stay here tonight?" she asked quietly, hating how small her voice sounded. "Of course, take the bedroom. I'll sleep on the couch." "Jackson, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "And Victoria?" He waited until she met his eyes. "We're going to get through this, I promise." As Victoria lay in Jackson's bed, surrounded by the familiar scent of his cologne, the same brand he'd worn in college, she thought about choices and consequences. 5 years ago, she'd chosen wealth and excitement over steady, dependable love. She'd chosen Marcus's promises over Jackson's certainties. Now she was pregnant, penniless, and homeless, while Jackson was risking everything he'd built to help her. The baby kicked, reminding her that her choices now affected more than just herself. She pressed her hand to her belly and made a promise to her unborn child. They would survive this. They would more than survive. They would win. 3 weeks passed in a blur of failed attempts and closed doors. Victoria had left Jackson's apartment after his supervisor had sent him a formal warning about harboring individuals involved in ongoing domestic disputes that could compromise federal investigations. The threat was clear: help Victoria and lose everything. She'd pawned her wedding ring and jewelry at 3 different shops to avoid suspicion, gathering enough cash to buy a beat-up Honda Civic from a Craigslist seller who didn't ask questions. The car became her home, parked in different locations each night to avoid security guards and police. 8 months pregnant now, every movement was an effort. Her back ached constantly. Her feet were so swollen she could barely wear shoes. And the Braxton Hicks contractions had started, each one making her panic that the baby was coming too soon. She'd spent these weeks trying to find legal representation, but every lawyer she approached suddenly became unavailable after learning who opposing counsel was. Marcus had hired Brennan, Kowalski, and Associates, known throughout Seattle as the firm that didn't just win cases, they destroyed opponents. "I'm sorry," the latest lawyer, a young woman who'd initially seemed sympathetic, said over the phone. "I've just realized I have a conflict of interest." "What conflict?" Victoria pressed, though she already knew the answer. "I can't discuss it. I wish you the best of luck, Miss Sterling." Miss Sterling. She wasn't even trying to reclaim her maiden name yet, and already the world was erasing her marriage, her history, her very existence as Marcus Sterling's wife. The cramping started while she was parked at a rest stop on Interstate 90, trying to sleep in the reclined driver's seat. Not contractions, she told herself, just stress. But when she felt wetness and looked down to see blood staining her maternity jeans, panic overrode everything else. The emergency room at Harborview Medical Center was crowded with the usual Saturday night chaos. Drunk college students, a man holding a bloody towel to his head, a woman arguing with the triage nurse about wait times. But they took Victoria immediately when they saw she was pregnant and bleeding. "When did the bleeding start?" the doctor asked. She was young, probably a resident, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "About an hour ago," Victoria managed through her fear. "Please, is my baby okay?" The doctor, her badge read Dr. Charles Bennett, began an examination, her face professionally neutral. "The baby's heartbeat is strong, but you're showing signs of severe stress. When was the last time you had a proper meal? A good night's sleep?" Before Victoria could answer, she heard a familiar voice in the hallway, one that made her blood freeze. "Where is my wife?" Marcus entered the room like he owned it, which in a way he probably did. The Sterling family had donated millions to this hospital. Their name was on 2 wings. Behind him came 2 men in expensive suits and a woman with a clipboard. "Hello, darling," Marcus said, his voice dripping with false concern. "We've been so worried about you." "Get out," Victoria said, trying to sit up despite Dr. Charles Bennett's gentle restraining hand. "I'm afraid I can't do that." The woman with the clipboard stepped forward, her voice crisp and professional. "I'm Dr. Patricia Hoffman, court-appointed psychiatrist. Mr. Sterling has filed for an emergency psychiatric hold based on concerns about your mental state and the welfare of your unborn child." "This is insane. I'm not mentally ill." "Living in your car while 8 months pregnant suggests otherwise," Dr. Hoffman said, making notes on her clipboard. "Mr. Sterling has provided extensive documentation of your erratic behavior, paranoid delusions about conspiracies against you, and refusal to accept reasonable divorce terms that would have provided for you and the child." "Reasonable?" Victoria struggled to sit up straighter. "He took everything. He stole my father's house, emptied my accounts." "See," Marcus said to Dr. Hoffman, his tone regretful, like a concerned husband dealing with a delusional wife. "The persecution complex we discussed. She's created this entire narrative where everyone is against her." Dr. Charles Bennett looked uncomfortable, glancing between them. "The patient seems coherent to me. She's scared and stressed, but that's understandable given—" "Are you a psychiatrist, Dr. Charles?" Dr. Hoffman's voice could have cut glass. "No, but then please focus on the medical care. We'll handle the psychiatric evaluation." Dr. Hoffman turned back to Victoria. "Mrs. Sterling, we're trying to help you. Your husband has graciously offered to ensure you receive the best care at Cascade Behavioral Health Center." Victoria knew that name. It was a private psychiatric facility in the mountains, the kind of place where wealthy families send embarrassing relatives to disappear. Once she was there, Marcus would have complete control, He could declare her incompetent, take full custody of the baby, and she'd never see her child again. "I need to use the restroom," Victoria said suddenly. "Someone should accompany her," Dr. Hoffman said immediately. "I'll go," Dr. Charles Bennett said quickly. "Hospital policy for fall risks." In the bathroom, Dr. Charles Bennett grabbed Victoria's arm gently but urgently. "Listen to me. I know who you are. I saw the real video, not the edited version they're showing on Sterling News. My sister went through something similar with her ex-husband. Psychiatric hold to steal custody. Can they really do this? With the right judge, the right paperwork, the right donations to the hospital? They can do anything." Dr. Charles Bennett glanced at the door nervously. "There's a staff exit at the end of this hallway. Turn left, then right. It leads to the parking garage. My shift ends in 5 minutes. If a patient happens to leave after I'm off duty, well, that's not my responsibility." "Why are you helping me?" "Because what they're doing is wrong, and because if they put you on a psychiatric hold, they can induce labor, declare you unfit, and take your baby. I've seen it happen." Dr. Charles Bennett squeezed her hand. "Go, now, don't stop for anything." Victoria ran or moved as fast as an 8-month pregnant woman could move, through the hospital corridors. Behind her, she could hear voices raised in anger, Dr. Hoffman demanding to know where she'd gone, Marcus's voice cold and controlled as he ordered security to find her. The parking garage was dark and echoed with her footsteps. Her old Honda was 3 levels up, but she didn't dare go back for it. They'd be watching it. Instead, she exited onto the street, disappearing into the Seattle night. She called the only number she could think of, one she'd found written on a bathroom stall at a gas station, a crisis hotline for women in danger. "I need help," she said when someone answered. "I'm pregnant, and they're trying to take my baby." The woman on the other end didn't ask for details. "Where are you?" 20 minutes later, a van picked her up outside a 24-hour diner. The driver, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, said only, "You're safe now." The shelter was in an industrial part of southwest Seattle, unmarked except for a small sign that read, "Haven House." It looked like any other warehouse from the outside, but inside it had been converted into a refuge. Clean rooms, a communal kitchen, children's playroom with toys and books. Maria Rodriguez, who ran the shelter, was waiting in the entrance. She was in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, but her eyes were warm with compassion and something else, recognition. "You're Victoria Sterling," she said. It wasn't a question. Victoria nodded, too exhausted to deny it. "I've been expecting you in a way. Your husband has a pattern. This isn't the first time." "What do you mean?" Maria led her to a small office, gesturing for her to sit. 3 years ago, a woman named Jennifer came here. Similar story, wealthy husband, sudden divorce, psychiatric holds, attempts to steal custody. Her husband was a business associate of Marcus Sterling. "What happened to her?" "She lost." Maria's expression was grim. "Her children were taken. Last I heard, she was living in Portland, trying to rebuild, but she's never gotten her kids back." Victoria's hands went to her belly protectively. "That won't happen to me." "No," Maria agreed, "because you have something she didn't have. You have proof of his crimes." She gestured to Victoria's purse, where the thumb drive Jackson had given her was hidden. "And you have allies she didn't have." For 2 weeks, Victoria found a kind of peace at Haven House. The other women didn't judge or pry. They understood the kind of fear that came from running from someone with power, money, and connections. Maria, it turned out, had been a high-powered corporate attorney before leaving to run the shelter. "I made millions defending corporations that destroyed lives," Maria explained one evening. "One day I realized I had become everything I'd once fought against. So I walked away, used my money to build this place. It's not much, but it's honest work." It was Maria who connected Victoria with Emily Lawson, one of Marcus's former mistresses who had reached out through the network of women who'd been hurt by powerful men. Amber arrived on a Tuesday evening, elegant in designer clothes that reminded Victoria painfully of her old life. "I have recordings," Amber said with wide preamble, setting an iPhone on the table between them. "Marcus liked to brag after sex. He told me about the money laundering, about the cartels. He even told me about a journalist who was getting too close to the truth." What happened to the journalist? Victoria asked, though she suspected she knew. Car accident, very tragic, very convenient. Amber's expression was bitter. That's when I started recording, insurance policy. Victoria's heart raced. This was it, the proof she needed. Will you testify? Publicly, no, Marcus has resources. If he knew I had these recordings, Amber shuddered, but I'll give them to you. You can use them however you need. Just keep my name out of it. Maria was already thinking strategically. I have contacts at the Seattle Times, the Washington Post. Real journalists, not the puppets at Sterling News. We could release everything at once, make it impossible to suppress. It has to be public, Victoria agreed. So public that even Marcus can't make it disappear. They were still planning when the door to the shelter exploded inward. Men in ice jackets poured in, shouting orders, weapons drawn. Women screamed, children cried, chaos erupted in seconds. This is a women's shelter, Maria stood, facing them fearlessly. You have no authority here. We received a tip about illegal immigrants harboring here, the lead agent said, his voice robotic, rehearsed. Everyone needs to show documentation. Now. It was obviously a pretense, a way to flush Victoria out. But the other women, many of whom might have been undocumented, panicked. In the chaos, Victoria saw Amber slip toward the back exit, but not before pressing something into Victoria's hand. A second phone. Maria Rodriguez, the lead agent read from a paper. You're under arrest for harboring illegal immigrants. I'm a citizen, Maria protested. I was born in Texas. My parents were born in Texas. Tell it to the judge. As they dragged Maria away in handcuffs, she caught Victoria's eye and mouthed a single word. Run. Victoria found the abandoned warehouse in Georgetown 3 days later, following a tip from one of the women at the shelter who worked in the area. It had been a textile factory once, the floor still marked with the ghost outlines of industrial sewing machines. She'd been living on vending machine food from the gas station next door, hiding during the day, moving only at night. The contractions started just after dawn, real ones this time, not the practice ones she'd been having for weeks. Her water broke in a rush that left her gasping, alone in the semi-darkness with only the sound of early morning traffic on the nearby freeway. She tried to call 911 but stopped, her finger hovering over the call button. The hospital meant Marcus, meant losing her baby. She tried Jackson, but his phone went straight to voicemail. He was probably in a meeting, or maybe his phone had been confiscated after helping her. She was alone. Well, this is disappointing. Victoria looked up to see Scarlett Devine standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the morning sun. She wore all white, white jeans, white silk blouse, white designer sneakers that had probably never touched actual ground before today. She held a professional camera, the kind used for high-end fashion shoots. How did you find me? Victoria gasped through another contraction. Oh, Victoria. Scarlett stepped into the warehouse, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. Did you really think our Marcus wouldn't have you tracked? That phone Amber gave you? GPS enabled. She's been working for us all along. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, and Victoria doubled over, grabbing a rusted pipe for support. Perfect, Scarlett said, raising the camera. The fall of Victoria Sterling, live and in color. My followers will absolutely eat this up. The perfect wife, the Stanford MBA, the senator's daughter, reduced to giving birth in filth like an animal. Why toi? Victoria gasped between contractions. What did I ever do to you? Scarlett's perfect mask cracked slightly, something raw and angry flickering across her face. You existed. You had the life, the name, the respectability. You were everything I could never be. You're Scarlett Devine. 15 million followers, fashion campaigns. You have everything. I have nothing. Scarlett's voice rose, echoing in the empty warehouse. Do you know what I actually am to him? What I've always been. His mistress. His sister. Scarlett laughed, bitter and sharp. Half-sister, technically. Diana's dirty little secret from before she married Marcus's father. Raised in shadows, paid to stay quiet, brought out when useful, hidden when inconvenient. Victoria's mind reeled even as another contraction hit. This one's so strong she had to drop to her knees. You're his sister? Surprise! The Sterling family is even more twisted than you imagined. Scarlett moved closer, camera still rolling. Marcus promised if I helped destroy you, I'd finally be acknowledged. Finally be legitimate. Part of the family business instead of the family shame. He's using you. Victoria managed between gasps. Just like he used me. Maybe, but at least I know it. I've always known it. You actually believed he loved you. Scarlett's phone rang. Put her on speaker, Marcus's voice commanded. Scarlett held the phone toward Victoria, who was now on her hands and knees, breathing through the pain. Victoria, Marcus's voice was cold, calculating as always. You're in labor. You need medical attention. I need you to leave me alone, Victoria gasped. That's not going to happen. You have two choices. Come back, submit to psychiatric treatment, and I'll ensure you and the baby are cared for. Or stay there, give birth alone, probably die, and I'll take the child anyway. Victoria felt something shift inside her, something beyond the physical pain. It was rage, pure and clean, burning through the fear and exhaustion. There's a third choice, she said. Oh. I tell the world everything, right now, live on Scarlett's Instagram. Scarlett's eyes widened. That's not the plan. Do it, Victoria commanded with a strength she didn't know she possessed. Put me live. 15 million followers, right? Let them see what the Sterling family really is. You wouldn't dare, Marcus said through the phone. But Victoria was already talking, Scarlett's camera capturing everything. Between contractions, through tears and pain, she told it all. The affairs, the theft, the forged documents, the psychiatric threats. She talked about the money laundering, naming names, citing dates, revealing everything Jackson had discovered. Sterling Capital moves money for the Sinaloa cartel, Victoria gasped, another contraction, making her pause. Check the transactions from March through September last year. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Cyprus, Montenegro. Scarlett's phone exploded with notifications. The live stream was going viral in real time. Comments flooded in by the thousands, then tens of thousands. News outlets were already picking it up, rebroadcasting the stream. Turn it off, Marcus roared through the phone. But Scarlett kept filming, something like awe in her eyes. No, she said quietly. I don't think I will. You little bitch, you work for me. I work for Diana, Scarlett corrected, and something tells me Mother is going to be very interested in how you've handled this situation. The warehouse door burst open again. Federal marshals poured in, weapons drawn, followed by EMTs with medical equipment. Behind them, impossible but real, stood a man Victoria had thought dead for 2 years. Dad, she whispered, convinced she was hallucinating from the pain. Senator James Morrison moved forward quickly, dropping to his knees beside his daughter. He was older, grayer, with new lines carved deep into his face, but undeniably alive. It's me, sweetheart. I'm here. You're dead, the plane crash. Staged, he said, helping the EMTs move her onto a gurney. Diana Sterling tried to have me killed when I discovered what her family was doing. The Justice Department faked my death, put me in witness protection while we built the case. 2 years, Victoria sobbed, from pain and shock in equal measure. You let me think you were dead for 2 years. I had to. They were watching you, using you. If you had known. He squeezed her hand as another contraction hit. I'm sorry, Victoria, but I'm here now. Marcus arrived then, flanked by his security team. His perfect composure finally cracked. He looked disheveled, his usually perfect hair mussed, his designer suit wrinkled. His eyes went from Victoria to her father, and his face went white. You're supposed to be dead. Disappointing, isn't it? Morrison stood, placing himself between Marcus and Victoria. 2 years of testimony, evidence, recordings. Your mother's empire is finished, Marcus. And so are you. You can't take her, Marcus said to the federal marshals. She's my wife. That's my child. Actually, the lead marshal said, she's under federal protection as a witness in an ongoing investigation. And you, Mr. Sterling, are under arrest. For what? money laundering, conspiracy, mail fraud, wire fraud, and about 17 other charges. We'll sort out the specifics downtown. Marcus lunged forward, but not at the marshals. At Victoria. His hands went for her throat, and for a moment, his mask completely fell away, revealing the monster beneath the sophisticated exterior. The gunshot was sharp and final. Marcus dropped, blood spreading across his white shirt. Diana Sterling stood in the doorway, a smoking pistol in her manicured hand, her face a mask of cold fury. "You stupid boy," she said to her son's body. "You were supposed to be controlled, calculated, not this creature ruled by emotion." She turned the gun on Victoria, but Scarlett was faster. The second shot caught Diana in the chest, and the matriarch of the Sterling Empire fell beside her son. Scarlett dropped the gun, staring at Diana's body. "I'm free," she whispered, and then louder, laughing through tears. "I'm finally free." The baby came then, in the chaos of sirens and shouting, with federal marshals securing the scene and EMTs working frantically. A girl healthy and screaming, born into violence but determined to live. "She's perfect," the EMT said, placing the baby on Victoria's chest. "Lily," Victoria whispered, the name coming unbidden. "Her name is Lily," her father leaned close. "She's beautiful, just like her mother." "I thought it would be a boy," Victoria said, exhausted beyond measure. "Everyone said it would be a boy." "Sterling men are overrated anyway," Morrison said. And despite everything, Victoria found herself laughing. Jackson arrived then, limping badly, his FBI windbreaker torn and bloody. "What happened to you?" Victoria asked. "Tried to get here sooner." Marcus's security team objected, strongly. He looked at the baby with wonder. "She's incredible." "She's a survivor," Victoria said, "like her mother." Scarlett was being led away in handcuffs, but she paused beside Victoria's gurney. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for everything." "I know," Victoria replied. "So am I." As the EMTs wheeled her toward the ambulance, Victoria looked back at the warehouse where she'd given birth, where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. The morning sun was streaming through the broken windows, turning the dust motes into gold. 6 months after the warehouse confrontation, Victoria Morrison sat in the congressional hearing room, her spine straight despite the bone-deep exhaustion that had become her constant companion. The weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. Lily slept peacefully in a carrier beside her chair, tiny fists curled, blissfully unaware that her mother was about to deliver testimony that would dismantle one of the Pacific Northwest's most powerful criminal enterprises. The hearing room was a study in controlled chaos. Every major news outlet had sent their best correspondents, except Sterling News, which had been shuttered within 48 hours of Diana's death, its assets frozen by federal order. The gallery hummed with the nervous energy of spectators who had followed the Sterling scandal from that first viral Instagram video to this moment of reckoning. Victoria recognized several faces, journalists who had covered her breakdown, social media influencers who had mocked her, even Rachel, her former best friend, sitting in the back row with tears streaming down her face. Ms. Morrison, the committee chair, Senator Patricia Hawkins, began deliberately using Victoria's reclaimed maiden name. "Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the extraordinary courage it took for you to come forward. Your preliminary testimony has already resulted in 17 arrests and the freezing of over $3 billion in assets connected to criminal enterprises." Victoria adjusted the microphone with steady hands, though her heart raced. She'd chosen her outfit carefully with Jackson's help, a simple navy suit that projected competence without ostentation, a white blouse, her mother's pearl necklace. Every detail mattered when facing cameras that would broadcast this moment to millions. "Thank you, Senator Hawkins. I want to begin by submitting into evidence these documents." She opened a leather portfolio and began laying out papers with practiced precision. Exhibit A, Sterling Capital's transaction records from March through September of last year. These show wire transfers totaling $873 million moving through a network of shell companies. She placed a thick stack of bank statements on the table. The pattern is consistent. Money enters through Cypress Holdings Limited in the Cayman Islands, moves to Montenegro through Blue Mountain Ventures, then splits into 17 different streams through Panama, finally returning to the United States through what appear to be legitimate real estate investments. Can you explain in layman's terms what this means? Senator Reynolds, a former prosecutor from Texas, leaned forward. It's classical money laundering, Senator, but with a twist. The money originates from the Sinaloa cartel's fentanyl operations. They produce the drugs using precursor chemicals from China, sell them throughout the United States, then need to clean the profits. Sterling Capital provided that service for a fee of 12%. 12% of $800 million, Senator Hawkins calculated aloud. Over $100 million in profit from drug money. Per year, Victoria corrected. This operation has been running for at least 4 years. She pulled out another set of documents. Exhibit B, communications between Marcus Sterling and cartel representatives. These were obtained from encrypted phones recovered during the federal raid. Victoria read from one message, her voice steady despite the horrific content. Package delivered successfully. Seattle distribution complete. 42 units moved. Pipeline remains open. Units referring to kilograms of fentanyl, she explained. Each kilogram can produce hundreds of thousands of lethal doses. The pipeline refers us to the distribution network Sterling Capital facilitated through legitimate businesses they controlled. Senator Richard Bennett from California interrupted. How many deaths can be attributed to this operation? Victoria had prepared for this question, though it still made her chest tight. The DEA estimates at least 3,000 overdose deaths in Washington, Oregon, and California can be traced to fentanyl moved through Sterling Capital's network. These aren't just statistics. These are mothers, fathers, teenagers. I have a list of names if the committee would like to enter them into the record. Please do, Senator Hawkins said softly. Victoria pulled out a bound document, hundreds of pages thick. These are the confirmed victims. Sarah Martinez, age 19, University of Washington student, died in her dorm room 3 days before finals. James Cooper, 43, construction worker and father of 3, died on his eldest daughter's birthday. Rebecca Thompson, 26, elementary school teacher, died in her classroom after school, found by the janitor. She continued reading names for 5 full minutes, the hearing room growing progressively quieter with each one. When she finished, several committee members were wiping their eyes. But the drug money was just one revenue stream, Victoria continued, moving to her next set of evidence. Exhibit C, documentation of systematic extortion operations. She laid out photographs and documents. Sterling Capital identified vulnerable businesses, restaurants, dry cleaners, small hotels, owned by immigrant families. They would report these businesses to ICE for violations, real or fabricated. Then, while the owners were detained or deported, Sterling Associates would purchase the businesses for pennies on the dollar. This is monstrous, Senator Reynolds muttered. It was efficient, Victoria corrected coldly. They acquired 47 businesses this way, with a combined value of $200 million. They paid less than $8 million total. She pulled out a tablet, swiping to a video file. This is Marcus Sterling himself, recorded without his knowledge by someone I cannot name for their safety, discussing this strategy. Marcus's voice filled the hearing room, casual and cold. The beauty is, they can't fight back. They're either deported or too terrified to speak up. We get prime real estate at foreclosure prices, and it all looks legal on paper. The American dream, right? Someone in the gallery gasped. Victoria recognized the voice. Tom Morrison, Rachel's husband, Marcus's former business partner. He was white as a sheet. Moving to the media manipulation, Victoria continued, pulling out another stack of evidence. Exhibit D, Sterling News Network's coordinated disinformation campaigns. She displayed a chart showing the network's organizational structure. Diana Sterling didn't just own a news network. She operated a propaganda machine. When journalist David Miller began investigating Sterling Capital's money laundering, this is what happened. Victoria played another recording, Diana Sterling's cultured voice clear and commanding. Miller is becoming a problem. Run the usual playbook. Hack his devices. Find something embarrassing. If there's nothing to find, create something. I want him discredited within 72 hours. What happened to Mr. Miller? Senator Hawkins asked. though her expression suggested she already knew. Deepfake pornographic videos appeared online, appearing to show him in compromising situations with underage individuals. The videos were completely fabricated, but the damage was instant and irreversible. He lost his job, his reputation, his family. He committed suicide 6 weeks later. How many journalists were targeted this way? Victoria consulted her notes. That we can confirm? 12. 4 committed suicide. 3 left the country. The rest were effectively silenced. She pulled out a thick folder. Exhibit E, the psychiatric weaponization files. This was the hardest evidence for Victoria to present, her voice catching slightly as she began. When Marcus wanted to divorce me and take custody of our child, he didn't just hire lawyers. He implemented what they called the gaslight protocol. She showed documents to the committee. First, they froze my assets using fraudulent claims. Then they isolated me from support systems. Friends were threatened, family was bought off or intimidated. Once I was alone and desperate, they deployed psychiatric professionals who were on their payroll. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, Victoria pulled out a photograph, licensed psychiatrist, paid $300,000 over 2 years by Sterling Capital through a shell company called Wellness Solutions, LLC. She provided psychiatric holds for 7 women whose husbands were connected to Sterling Capital. Victoria displayed case files. Jennifer Walsh, diagnosed with severe delusional disorder after she discovered her husband was embezzling. Lost custody of her 3 children. Amanda Bennett, diagnosed with paranoid personality disorder after finding evidence of her husband's affairs. Forcibly hospitalized for 6 weeks. Maria Gonzalez, diagnosed with borderline personality disorder after trying to divorce her abusive husband. Her testimony in the divorce was dismissed as unreliable due to her mental illness. Where are these women now? Senator Richard Bennett asked. Jennifer lives in Portland, still fighting for visitation rights to her children. Amanda returned to Taiwan, unable to cope with the trauma. Maria, Victoria's voice broke slightly. Maria took her own life last year. Senator Reynolds looked furious. Are you saying licensed medical professionals were deliberately misdiagnosing women for money? I'm saying they were part of a systematic operation to use psychiatry as a weapon. Here's Dr. Hoffman's own notes from my case. Victoria read, subject displays resistance to treatment recommendations. Recommend immediate involuntary hold for safety of unborn child. Sterling family prepared to provide appropriate care post-delivery. They were going to take your baby. They were going to induce labor, declare me unfit, and give my child to Marcus. It was all planned, all legal on paper, all monstrous in reality. Victoria moved to her next exhibit, a series of police reports. Exhibit F, law enforcement corruption. Sterling Capital had 17 members of Seattle PD on payroll, including 2 lieutenants and a captain. They had 3 judges who consistently ruled in their favor. They had contacts in the FBI who warned them about investigations. She showed bank records. Captain Michael Torres received $40,000 monthly through his wife's consulting firm, which had no other clients and provided no actual services. Judge Patricia Whitman's son received a full scholarship to Stanford from a Sterling-funded foundation, despite having grades that wouldn't normally qualify for admission. The corruption was systemic, Victoria explained. It wasn't just bribes. It was job opportunities for relatives, college admissions for children, medical treatments for sick family members. They found what people needed most and used it to own them. Senator Hawkins called for a brief recess. Victoria stepped into the hallway where Jackson waited with a now-awake Lily, who was fussing for a bottle swallow. You're doing incredibly, he said, taking in her pale face and shaking hands. The evidence is overwhelming. It has to be, Victoria replied, taking Lily and feeling instantly calmer as her daughter nestled against her. Marcus might be dead, but his network isn't. They're watching this, calculating whether they can survive it. Her father appeared, having watched from the gallery. The Attorney General just announced a task force, 50 agents, unlimited resources. This is going to bring down the entire network. How many more people are involved? Victoria asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. Based on what you've presented, at least 300 individuals across Washington, Oregon, and California. This is bigger than anyone imagined. When the hearing resumed, Victoria presented her final and most damaging evidence. Exhibit G, the murder files. The hearing room went completely silent. Marcus Sterling personally ordered or facilitated 11 murders that we can document. She laid out photographs and documents with clinical precision. David Miller, the journalist, driven to suicide through deliberate psychological torture. Michael Rodriguez, a DA who was investigating Sterling Capital, died in a car accident after his brakes were tampered with. Sarah Williams, Marcus's former assistant who knew too much, overdosed on fentanyl despite having no history of drug use. She showed forensic reports, phone records, payment authorizations. Each death was carefully planned to look accidental or self-inflicted. Each victim was someone who threatened the Sterling Empire. Including your father? Senator Hawkins asked gently. Including my father. Victoria's voice was steady now. When Senator Morrison discovered the money laundering operation, Diana Sterling personally ordered his death. The plane crash that was supposed to kill him was caused by an explosive device. 3 innocent crew members died because Diana Sterling wanted my father silenced. She played one final recording, Diana's voice cold and matter-of-fact. Morrison knows too much. Make it look like mechanical failure. I don't care about collateral damage. This is why I'm here, Victoria said, looking directly at the committee. Not just for justice for myself or my daughter, but for David Miller's children who will never see their father again. For Maria Gonzalez's parents who buried their daughter. For the 3,000 families destroyed by Sterling drugs. For everyone who was silenced, disappeared, or destroyed because they stood in the way of profit. Senator Hawkins nodded slowly. Mr. Morrison, your evidence has provided enough material for potentially hundreds of prosecutions. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the official record? Victoria thought about everything she'd endured. The homelessness, the fear, giving birth in a warehouse while Scarlett filmed her humiliation. She thought about Maya, the little girl born from systematic abuse, now sleeping safely in a room Victoria had painted lavender. She thought about all the women still trapped in similar situations, afraid to speak up, afraid they wouldn't be believed. Yes, Senator, I want to say that what happened to me wasn't unique. Right now, across this country, women are being silenced through the same tactics. Their accounts are being frozen through fraudulent means. They're being diagnosed with mental illnesses they don't have. Their children are being stolen through corrupt custody battles. The Sterling Empire was just one tentacle of a much larger monster. She looked directly at the main camera, knowing her words would be broadcast to millions. If you're watching this and you're trapped in a similar situation, you are not crazy. You're not alone. Document everything. Find allies. And know that the truth, properly presented, properly protected, can bring down even the most powerful abusers. Thank you, Ms. Morrison, Senator Hawkins said formally. This committee moves to recommend immediate criminal prosecution of all individuals identified in this testimony, immediate reform of psychiatric hold procedures, and a comprehensive investigation into similar operations nationwide. The vote was unanimous. As Victoria left the hearing room, holding Lily close, she was surrounded by reporters. But she noticed the other people more. Women who caught her eye and nodded, men who looked ashamed, investigators taking notes. Each one represented another story, another potential case, another life that might be saved because she had chosen to speak. Jackson appeared beside her, creating a protective barrier against the crowd. Ready to go home? Almost, Victoria said. She turned to face the main camera crew. Truth Forward Media launches next month. We'll be investigating cases like mine, giving voice to the silenced. If you need help, reach out. She gave the website address, then walked away, her daughter in her arms, her truth delivered. Her war against the Sterling Empire won, but her larger battle against all such empires just beginning. The evidence she'd presented would result in 317 arrests over the next year. 43 businesses would be returned to their rightful owners. 12 women would regain custody of their children. And Sterling Capital's victims would share $900 million in restitution. But for Victoria, walking out of that building into the bright Washington sunshine, the only victory that mattered was the weight of her daughter in her arms and the knowledge that Lily would grow up in a world with one less monster in it. The letter from Scarlett arrived at Victoria's new house in Tacoma 3 months after the congressional hearings. Victoria had chosen Tacoma deliberately, close enough to Seattle for the legal proceedings that still demanded her attention, far enough to feel like a fresh start. She read it while Lily napped, sitting in the nursery she'd painted sage green, a color that felt hopeful without being naive. Victoria, the letter began in Scarlett's distinctive handwriting, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect understanding. But I need you to know the truth about something. I have a daughter, she's 3 years old. Her name is Maya. Marcus is her father. It started when I was 17. Diana brought me to Marcus, told him I was his half-sister, told him to teach me the family business. The teaching went beyond business. Diana knew. She arranged it. She said it would bind us all closer, make me truly part of the family. Maya has been with nannies since birth, hidden like I was. I've seen her only in photographs. Diana said she would be raised as a sterling, but only if I proved my loyalty. I'm writing because I know I'm going to prison for a long time. Maya needs a real mother. Someone who understands what it means to survive the Sterling family. Someone who can give her the love I never could. The lawyers will contact you about guardianship. Please don't let her disappear into the system. She's innocent in all of this. Scarlett Victoria set the letter down with shaking hands. Another child, another victim, another life destroyed by the Sterling legacy of abuse. Jackson found her crying in the nursery an hour later. He'd been coming by daily, helping with Lily, rebuilding their friendship with careful patience. His leg had healed, though he still walked with a slight limp from the shooting during the federal raid. What's wrong? He asked, immediately concerned. She handed him the letter, watched his face change as he read, saw the disgust and pity war in his expression. Marcus's daughter with his own sister? Half-sister. But yes. Victoria picked up Lily, needing to hold her own daughter. She wants me to take her. That's a lot to ask. Is it? Victoria looked at him. That little girl didn't choose her parents. She didn't choose to be born from abuse. She's 3 years old, Jackson. What happens to her if I say no? Foster care. Maybe adoption eventually. Or maybe she disappears into the system. Maybe she grows up never knowing why she was abandoned. Maybe she becomes another casualty of the Sterling family. Jackson studied her face. You're going to do it, aren't you? How can I not? I have the money from the settlement. I have the space. Most importantly, I understand what she's survived, even if she doesn't know it yet. The legal process took 2 months. Scarlett pled guilty to manslaughter, accepting 15 years with possibility of parole in 7. During the sentencing, she looked at Victoria once, mouthed "thank you," then faced her fate with the same composure she'd once used for fashion shoots. Maya arrived on a Tuesday, brought by a social worker who seemed relieved to be placing the child with family, even unconventional family. She was small for 3, with Marcus's gray eyes but Scarlett's delicate features. She clutched a worn stuffed rabbit and said nothing for the first hour, just watched everything with those 2 knowing eyes. Hi, Maya, Victoria said gently, kneeling to her level. I'm Victoria. This is Lily. Would you like to see your room? Maya nodded silently and followed Victoria to the room she'd prepared, formerly her home office, now painted soft lavender with a toddler bed and toys carefully selected for a child who had lived her entire life with paid caregivers. That night, Victoria heard crying from Maya's room. She found the little girl sitting up in bed, clutching her rabbit. Where's Mommy? Maya asked, the first words she'd spoken. Victoria sat on the bed, choosing honesty diluted with kindness. Your mommy had to go away for a while, but she asked me to take care of you. Is that okay? Maya studied her with those serious gray eyes. Are you nice? I try to be. The nanny said you're Lily's mommy. That's right. Can you be my mommy too? Victoria's heart broke. If you'd like me to be. Maya crawled into her lap and Victoria held her while she cried, this little girl who was both victim and reminder of the Sterling family's evil. 2 years later, the conference room at Truth Forward Media was filled with natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Victoria stood at the head of the polished table, addressing her team of 12 investigative journalists, all women who had survived their own versions of institutional betrayal. The Brennan Industries story goes live tomorrow, she announced. Legal has cleared it. We have 3 senators ready to call for hearings based on our findings. Truth Forward Media had started as Victoria's attempt to ensure no woman suffered in silence, as she almost had. Using part of the $280 million settlement from the Sterling estate, she'd built a media company focused on investigative journalism that exposed corruption, particularly when it targeted vulnerable women and children. In 2 years, they'd exposed 7 cases similar to hers, wealthy men using the system to silence and rob their wives. 3 judges had been removed from the bench. Dozens of women had been reunited with children they'd lost to corrupt custody battles. Her assistant knocked and entered. "Ms. Morrison, your 2 o'clock is here." Victoria smiled. "Send her in." Maria Rodriguez entered, fully vindicated and now serving as Truth Forward's legal advisor. Her 3 days in ICE detention had become a civil rights case that resulted in significant reforms and a substantial settlement she donated entirely to Haven House. "The Washington Post wants to do a feature on us," Maria said. "Above the Fold, Sunday edition. Let me guess, from scandal to success story?" "Something like that. They're fascinated by how you turned personal tragedy into systemic change." Victoria looked out at the Seattle skyline. The city looked different now than it had 3 years ago, when she'd stood in that hotel suite watching her life crumble. Now she saw it as territory to be protected, full of stories that needed telling, truths that needed exposing. "Did you see the latest numbers?" Maria asked. 13 million unique visitors last month. We're officially larger than what Sterling News was at its peak. "It's not about size," Victoria replied. "It's about impact." That evening, Victoria arrived home to controlled chaos. Lily, now 2.5, was painting at the kitchen table, more paint on her face than the paper. Maya, 5 and finally starting to laugh regularly, was building a block tower that threatened to topple. Jackson was attempting to cook dinner, his tie thrown over his shoulder to avoid splatters. He'd officially moved in 6 months ago, after a year of careful dating, rebuilding trust alongside love. "How was the testimony?" Victoria asked. He'd been in court, testifying in the last of the Sterling-related trials. "Clean sweep, all 12 defendants guilty. The prosecutor says it's the largest corruption conviction in state history." "Good." She kissed him, then went to admire Lily's painting and Maya's architecture. Later, after the girls were asleep, Victoria stood in her home office looking at the wall of articles about Truth Forward Media. The Pulitzer Prize for Investigative Journalism sat on a shelf, awarded for the Sterling investigation. Next to it was a photo from the congressional hearing and a framed letter from a woman in Texas whose children had been returned after Truth Forward exposed judicial corruption in her custody case. But the item she treasured most was simple, a crayon drawing from Maya that said, "My family," with stick figures representing all of them, even Jackson with his cane. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message from a woman in California. Another wife vanished after discovering her billionaire husband's affairs. Another fortune stolen through legal manipulation. Another child at risk. Victoria typed back, "We'll help, send everything you have." Because that's what Truth Forward did. They found the vanished women, exposed the corrupt systems, and proved that truth, properly wielded, was the most powerful weapon against abuse. Jackson appeared in the doorway. New case? New case, tech billionaire in Silicon Valley. Wife disappeared a week ago after finding him with his assistant. He's already claiming she's mentally unstable. Same playbook. They always use the same playbook. That's why we'll win. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Do you ever regret it? Not taking the easy path? You could have settled quietly, taken whatever Marcus offered, avoided all of this." Victoria thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, standing in that hotel room with champagne and dreams. That woman had believed in fairy tales, in the protective power of wealth and status. "That woman had to die," she said quietly, "for this one to be born." She turned in his arms, looking at the man who had risked everything to help her when she had nothing to offer in return. "Besides," she added, "the easy path would have meant letting him win, letting them all win. How many women would still be trapped if I'd stayed quiet?" Her computer chimed with another message. Another woman needing help. Another story that demanded telling. "Go," Jackson said, understanding. I'll handle bedtime. Victoria sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and began typing. Thank you for reaching out to Truth Forward Media. Your story matters. You are not alone. Outside, Seattle glittered in the darkness, the same city where she'd lost everything and found herself, where she'd discovered that sometimes vanishing wasn't about disappearing. It was about shedding the life that was killing you so you could build one worth living. The camera pulled back from the window, rising above the house where two little girls slept safely, where love was being rebuilt on foundations of truth, where a woman who had lost everything had created something powerful from the ashes. On the screen, white text appeared, dedicated to survivors of domestic abuse. Below, smaller, if you need help, National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-72333. The final frame showed Truth Forward Media's website homepage with the headline, 13 women reunited with their children. This month, thanks to your support. The view counter showed 15 million and climbing. The story ended, but the work continued. Because in the real world, pregnant wives vanished every day, leaving letters or nothing at all, disappearing into a system designed to erase them. But now, thanks to one woman who refused to stay vanished, they had somewhere to turn. They had truth. They had forward motion. They had hope.